Hello and welcome back to DriveDriverDriven. I'm Humble and today is the day you've all been waiting for. I finally have the MK kit here. The crate is in the driveway and today we got to do a little bit of rearranging and unpack the crate and get it into the garage. We have basically a day or two of clear weather, so I want to make use of that first, unpack the crate, and then we can go through and sort it and get on to kind of what today's video is all about. So I'm going to put you in the time lapse while you watch, and we're going to get this thing unloaded. Everything unloaded, piled into the garage. So, got a whole bunch of stuff to look at here, but really, I have some parts for the Zero. I have some parts for Sean's Zero that kind of hitched a ride. And then I have a whole bunch of parts for the MK. So this is pretty much not very organized. But there's a little method to the madness. I tried to stick body parts over there, aluminum panels, etc. Wiring, hoses, radiator, etc. kind of in this pile. And then it was just wherever anything else would fit. Now that the chassis is here, I can actually point out some of the things that are different on just the bare chassis. One of which is very easy to spot, and that is the roll bar assembly here. The real big differences are, whereas this one's set up as an older book chassis or an early Caterham chassis with the outboard shocks, etc. The MK from the get-go is set up kind of like a Caterham CSR with inboard suspension and ride height adjustment bars. It also has this roll cage that is removable or modular. So we have this setup, which is what I'm going to use for track days. It's a lot safer. It's got anti-intrusion bars on the side. It's got a full halo up top. And more importantly, it ties all the way down here into the chassis and gives positive support for the main roll hoop. The roll bar on the Zero does not do that. It's just a main hoop that goes in the middle. And that's one of the things I don't like about it. It's also not supported with a cross brace or anything in the middle of the hoop. So, again, it's more of an illusion of safety rather than actual safety. Now, when I'm not at the track, I can use this guy, which is the sports bar. It's basically just the back section. So it's the down tubes and the main roll hoop, and that's it. And with just this on the car, I can use the weather kit. So I can put on a top and doors and tie everything together and be kind of dry-ish or mostly dry-ish for inclement weather. And I really, really like that. The other big difference is on the MK chassis, they chose to use the whole Miata rear differential support, pumpkin, whatever you want to call it. They mounts like the Miata parts do using the arms. Whereas on the Zero, you actually cut the arms off and then you bolt the differential assembly to the chassis, like you hard mount it. And so far it's been okay, but again, I'm not really racing the Zero, and I won't be pushing it nearly as hard as this one, again, because I'll be driving this in places where it's safe to do so, or safer anyhow. The last kind of big difference on this chassis versus the Zero, at least obviously, is you'll notice that the footwells are different lengths. And on the driver's side footwell, it comes out full length, but on the passenger side, it's cut short by 6 inches, 7 inches or so, and that's because this is where the dry sump tank assembly will fit and keep everything up here in the engine bay nice and tidy. Yeah, you lose a little bit of legroom on the passenger side, but once you're actually seated, and I'll probably place the seat fully back, there's still going to be plenty of legroom, and you'll be able to brace your feet up against the front part of the footwell here. So those are just some of the big things and why I chose this chassis, or I'm choosing this chassis after building the Zero. Now, as you can see, we've got kind of a 7 takeover in the garage, which means I had to kick the Ultima out into the yard here. The GT3 cover is really doing its best, but I think what I need to do is find a better car cover, one that fits the Ultima better than this one, but this will do for the time being. So the Ultima is going to live out in the garage for however long it takes me to put the MK together. Again, this may look daunting to some, but this isn't my first or second or even third rodeo at this point. So I don't imagine that this process is going to take very long. At least not in real time. When it comes to videos, etc., I still plan on doing weekly uploads, so those might drag out. But really the hope is to have this done very, very quickly and to get it on the road really before spring. And the only thing I'm waiting on at the moment is the engine. And if you caught Mike Kojima's video over at Moto IQ, you know that he's already started work on that motor, so I'm expecting a call any day now to go and pick that up. We're at the point now where we've unloaded the crate. We have the chassis sitting in the garage on some dollies, and basically there's parts strewn all over the floor. What's next? What do you do? And to that I say inventory. I think I mentioned it before on the Ultima build. I don't know if I really mentioned it on the Zero build, but really step number 1 needs to be inventory. For me anyway, I kind of know the order in which this car and chassis needs to be built, but if this is your first time, many of the manufacturers now, even GBS actually, has instructions that they can provide for assembling these kits. And so you can sort of pre-read all of the instructions or the assembly instructions to get an idea of what needs to go on the car and in what order. And so as I unpack and I label and I organize things, I try to set them up in sections or stages that make sense when assembling. So, for example, I'm not going to put all the bodywork right up front and make the suspension or paneling in the back harder to reach. In fact, it should be the opposite, because paneling and suspension are going to be the first to go on, and the body is actually one of the last things to go on. So, things like that are kind of common sense, and you can figure that out by looking at it. But again, going through the assembly instructions would really shed light on the build order. Next up then is we're going to start actually reading some of these labels, figuring out what's in some of these boxes, and start organizing this mess into kind of a build order so that we don't need to go digging for parts. And also we can figure out what we have and what we don't have. So if we need to order anything, we can get on that right away. So back out of time lapse, just a quick spin of the garage here. A little bit different from where I ended the time lapse. So let's start with all the big stuff here. As much as I didn't want to, I needed to unwrap all the body and look for damage. Any kind of cracks, star marks, chips, anything that could have happened during shipping. Everything is fine, but there's something I want to point out that MK has done that nobody else has done in my experience with various kit companies, and that is they've actually already painted the backs of all of the panels. So everything's already got a black coat of paint on it, and if you have watched any of even the Ultima videos from the build and rebuild, that's something that we had to do. So the fact that it comes from the factory like this, kind of ready to go in, is amazing. It's wonderful. And they do a great job of masking everything off and finishing the edges. So hats off to MK actually for doing that. We have some of our interior bits, our like center tunnel cover, the doors, some interior panels there. Another thing I want to mention is, so on these panels, they're all aluminum panels, but everything has been powder coated. So we have these black panels, and that's going to look fantastic against the yellow chassis. Now I'm going to grab one of the parts here. These are the rockers for the suspension, and just for illustrative purposes, this is something that Neil over at MK had warned me about, and that's clashing yellows. And as you can see, we do have clashing yellows. The chassis is a little bit brighter than the bodywork. And so with that discovery, that's something that he feared, and to be fair, it's something he warned me against, and I went for anyway. And I don't regret it. Like, I really love this bright yellow. In fact, it did end up matching our wheels almost perfectly. It's kind of tucked away there, but It's that same bright yellow, and I love it. I really do like how bright this is, and it even pops brighter in the sun. So what I might do is deliver all these panels off to a friend of mine and actually have them painted, before anything goes on the car, to match it to the chassis, to just make them a little bit brighter. And that's something I'm seriously considering now. Speaking of chassis, so you can see that we pulled the roll cage off. I wanted to do that just to see how heavy or light this is. And it's not all that bad. It's kind of a handful to deal with one person, but with two people, super easy. With two people, getting it on and off the car is not too bad at all. But the other reason is I didn't want to have to duck in and out of this jungle gym while working on the chassis, putting all the paneling in, the interior, etc. So it was just better to take that off for the time being. The other thing is, again, working from plans supplied by MK. I've had the fuel safe tank. Well, that's the first thing actually that I got. That was the first piece of the car that ever arrived. And that's because I had it custom done by Fuel Safe. Those guys did an amazing job. I gave them the dimensions supplied by Neil at MK. He trusted me with the dimensions and everything. And I told him what it was for. He's all for it. He likes the idea of safety, of being able to have these tanks available for people to use if they want. They can call up Fuel Safe and just reference the design. And here it is. Like, it's a perfect fit in the chassis. It'll work with the hold down straps as supplied by MK. It's dimensionally the same as their tank. It sacrifices a little bit of internal volume, but again, it's for safety reasons, for things like foam, and it runs the internal fuel pump and the same hydromat pickup that I use in the Ultima, and actually in the Zero, to be fair. And so that's all ready to go. Super stoked that everything fits. It should have, but I'm really pleased that it's just nice to see things come together. Now on to why we made this whole mess in the first place, was sorting everything out. So we have our seats, we have our exhaust down here, some of the silicone tubing that we'll need for radiator, coolant systems, etc. Big old box of hardware for both the roll bar and just general hardware for assembly. Over here, electrics, so switches, engine running gear, lights. This is all like engine and transmission pile. Here is interior. So this is different parts that we need for the interior, or things that go under the scuttle, or in the back in the rear tray area. Our stripe kit. Over here is the wiper motor assembly and our seat belts for the interior. And then on the what's left on the chassis is some of our paneling, which I'll grab the paneling off to the side and put it on here. More hose and our protective coupling, our brake tubing and our fuel tubing. And then again, some more associated hardware for our coolant systems, battery mount, etc. Our suspension is back over there in a pile. And I think the way I'm going to attack this first is same way as we did on the Ultima, is start with paneling, start with plumbing. After that, getting the suspension put together and put on and making the car a roller. And then going on from there, starting with our electrical system, brake systems, etc. Because it's nice to have all that stuff on the car and ready to go and test it before we get too far into putting the body on. Just like we had all the braking issues with the holes in plumbing and such for the Zero, I don't want to run into that again for the MK. So I want to get the brakes on and the brake system in as early as possible so that we can, bleed it and test it and deal with any issues that arise before anything else goes on. That way we're not ruining paint or the like. So that's going to definitely be in one of the earlier sections. I think that's going to do it for now. There was a couple things that were missing that I need to chase down. Some seat rails I didn't see in any of the parts, and a few other things that I have to check the original bill of lading or the parts list to see if they're even included. They may not be, and I'll just need to hunt down my own parts. That's why we kind of do this inventory, is figure out what we need so we can get on those parts, get them ordered as quickly as possible. Axles was another thing, so I'll have to get that order in. But otherwise, I think I've got just about everything I need to get going and get most of this car done without too much of a holdup. So that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'm glad to finally get this build started, and I'll see you next time.